Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Review of Standing Orders Subcommittee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through the Council's website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPad or iPhone. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. Usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. And when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. So moving on to the agenda this morning, item 1, Sediment and Apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide sediment and apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can advise we have 6 members present this morning. 3 in the hall being yourself, the Vice Chair, and Councillor Campbell. 3 on Teams being Councillors Brodie, Marshall and McFarlane. 1 apology from Councillor Wood. Thank you.
Thank you, and I approve members' remote participation. Moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest or statement of connection? Nope, good. Item 3, minute of the previous meeting, 14th of November 2024. Can we note the minutes? Noted, good. And moving on to the first substantive item, item 4, review of area committees. Report by Head of Thriving Communities, and Liz Manson is here to assist. Are you on your own? No, Harry? That's perfect. Do you have anything to add to the report? Quite happy. So I'll open the meeting to member debate. Any members have any questions on the report? It's been to us quite a few times now. Councillor Campbell. Morning, John.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just probably a few points of clarity, if I may. Looking at the report, 4.6 on page 12, the community engagement, and I kind of highlighted, some of the examples for, community councils, federations, community groups, community asset transfers completed in public forums. Now, one of the public forums in my ward is the Echo, and it has been recognised by the council. So just for a point of clarity, is it online sort of public forums as well as, just other public forums that bodies get together that can engage with the council? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the suggestions that came through from the elected members at the seminar, and also when we went round the area committees in November, was that you could have something like a sort of question time session when members of the public were simply able to come along and ask the area committee councillors questions with either prior notice or just something on the night. And again, through the benchmarking, that was something that some other councils do. So it would be in the hands of the area committee. If they decided that that's what they would like to have as part of their programme, we'd be happy to design however they wanted to do it. And yes, if it could include existing groups that may want to come along, or you could do an online session, very much up to the area committee when you look at it as we propose after the summer.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think it's quite important that we do engage with as many communities as possible, whether they are online communities or otherwise. Just on that particular one, the community engagement, some members of my group was wondering why the Wigton area committee was moved to Stranraer, because that seems to sort of dispel sort of people in that particular Wigton area, you know, for being involved. I don't know what the reason was that was for, but I said I would bring it up.
My understanding is that there were some technical issues which determined the location of this time, but you will see as part of the sort of wider issues that there is work ongoing through colleagues in Democratic Services about the wider general issue about where meetings take place, and there certainly was a number of area committees like the idea of moving around, but clearly that that's a more difficult set of arrangements to make. But at 414 you'll see that that wider piece of work about service committees, full council and area committees is going on. But that particular instance, I understand, was a technical problem on that day. Thank you.
Sorry to hog this, Chair, but I've got one final question just to ask, just for a point of clarity. It's on the Area Committee remits, page 14-15, the proposals. Right at the very top of the Area Committee remit, determination of community asset transfers requests, which are recommended for consideration by the Area Committee. But some asset transfer requests could be common good. So it needs to go to a completely different determination, or a completely different committee for that determination. I do realise in the papers in 4.13 there is a common good working group being established to look into things like that. I'm just wondering if that's also part of it before it comes to area committee, that common good gets cited or determine an asset transfer before it goes to area committee. Just on those points. Thanks, Chair.
No, that's a really helpful point just to highlight, because yes, common good does have some particular considerations, and I think that's why we've recognised that for the area committee common good community asset transfer request, yes, we have a proposal here, but the common good review group is looking at this in great detail, including the consultation period, etc., that's required for particularly for common good properties. So Mark Thompson and the officer team who are looking at that detail will be bringing a recommendation to you at a later date. Again, just in terms of timing, we're recommending that this would start after the summer recess. So the common good specific aspect will be able to be brought in at the same time, if indeed there's any changes to the current arrangements for common good.
Thanks for that. And I'm just looking at appendix on page 19, the scheme of administration delegation 5.7.8, where it says administration and oversight of common goods and trusts as appropriate. I'm just wondering, could that be strengthened to sort of take on some of those points?
And again, that's exactly what the Common Good Review Group is looking at. They're looking at benchmarking. There's obviously some very detailed legal considerations around that as well. And as we improve our arrangements for Common Good and Common Good subcommittees, that is exactly the part of the area committee remit that may be updated.
Thank you to yourself, Chair. Just in terms of additional information which might be helpful to members, the way that our scheme of delegations currently sit is that the area committees have, in essence, the authority to create a common good sub under them, and in essence that's the process. So if you set up a common good subs, obviously in terms of your point there, then that would go through that pipeline. If that particular area committee doesn't have a common good subs, then it would go straight to area committee, and hence that's why that's there. But it can delegate that. So currently that's already there in terms of that delegation being passed to the subcommittee. But that option and mechanism in governance terms is already there.
Okay with that, Councillor Campbell? Yeah. Yep, happy, good. My understanding as well was that it was around the discussion through the Common Good group that's been set up as to whether it could present for final ratification at an area committee rather than bringing it to economy and infrastructure as well. And I think it's just around that discussion and those
That's right.
recommendations.
And the feedback that we had from community transfer bodies, and that's one reason why this updated proposal has come, is that the time that it takes to consider it, when at the moment we have a two-stage process. And so we want to ensure, of course, that the decision-making is robust, and that's why the new procedure, which will come to as part of the Community Asset Transfer Review, will make sure that we've got the right arrangements in place for when E&I Committee wants to look at it and when it can come to an area committee or a common good subcommittee.
Perfect, thanks Liz. Councillor Marshall. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Chair. Thanks. Just a couple of points. I think John touched on the first one, which is the community engagement. It's really, yeah, I agree with the proposal at the top of page 13. I think it just needs a little bit more detail and fleshed out on that. I think we have in the past had area committees, you know, when we gave funding out to groups and invited them along to kind of give a report back. But this is something separate, it appears, which would be out with the area committee. So probably the details we would probably want is, it might be that it's in a specific, it might be flexible to move that location, so it might be specific to an area within the area committee. So it's just really to seek assurance that we'll get a little bit more detail on what that'll look like and what the kind of engagement sessions will be in the evening, because we find that area committees meet through the day. I can remember when they used to meet in the evening, and it used to have a better turnout, but I think we've seen over years a decline in it when there wasn't the public forum. There used to be quite lively public forums, but I think we stopped those a number of years ago. So just a little bit more detail on that one as that one's worked up. I think with regards to the performance management, I welcome the fact that South Scotland Enterprise seem give a positive response and they're willing to actually come along. I think, and it does kind of touch on it, but I think it is important that whilst to give an overview of what the organisation is doing, I think it has to be focused on locality as well. So really, the flavour of it should be on what's happening in that specific area committee area to make it relevant to the members to discuss there. On the area committee remits at the bottom of page 15, the community asset transfers. Again, probably need more information on that, because it seems to be I'm trying to understand which ones would go to area committee and which ones would normally just go through the normal process. But it seems to be it's a recommendation from the officer team. So a little bit more detail on what ones would be more suitable to area committee rather than through the service committee. And finally, just on, and I think we touched again on 4.14, this is about the start times of area committees. They've been amended, but also this kind of arrangement to take them out to various venues, etc. Just a note of caution on that, and I think the chair and other members will, kind of more long-standing council members will remember that we did try this a number of years ago. And we went to various locations within the area committees. It wasn't really that successful because we'd still be meeting through the day. And I don't know what the reason for actually changing location would be if you're not relying on members of the public. Because my worry is that at the moment we meet with the area committee, it has all the facilities to host an area committee. And do we really want to go to the additional expense of finding other suitable locations? And I'm just trying to wonder what the benefits would be of actually having area committees in different parts of that region, unless it was maybe attached to a visit to that area or something else.
Yeah, before I bring Liz in, I do remember that we tried this and we floated round Annandale and Eskdale at one point, and it wasn't overly successful, and that was pre-COVID and pre-online. So I think that we really have to consider that as well, that some of the venues, particularly in our smaller towns, are maybe not as easy for tech setup as others. I'm looking at Abby on this as well. So I think that that happened pre-COVID and pre-hybrid meetings. So we really need to factor that in as well. There's no point in hosting it somewhere where we can't get connectivity easily. Liz, can you pick up on the other points?
Thank you very much. So you're absolutely right. In terms of the community engagement, what we were planning is that a report would come to the area committee in September, and it would be offering the area committee the different groupings. Some of them are listed there. The area committee might want other members of the public or community groups to be invited along, and it's entirely in your hands about when and where you would want to meet them. The discussion at the area committees was that they would be in person, so they'd be more like a sort of community conversation style rather than an area committee meeting, so that you were able to have perhaps presentations on good practice, what the projects were doing, and to be able to have discussion with the people in your area who were delivering these projects and doing these pieces of work. So yes, the report that comes to area committees asking you to determine your programme of community engagement will have more detail in that. With regard to the South of Scotland enterprise, yes, I think that's a very valid point about highlighting to them you want to focus in on the projects that they're delivering in that particular locality. Because this would be unique, I think South of Scotland enterprise would not have a national framework or anything like that that they would need to deliver on. So I'm sure they'd be able to tailor the report format in the way that you would want to see their information. And finally, in terms of the area committee remit, so the procedure that or the criteria that the officer group would use is currently being developed, and that will be brought to you as part of the community asset transfer review. But again, benchmarking and some discussions have highlighted it could be, for example, where the council gets an income from an asset, where there's perhaps current frontline service delivery of an asset, a threshold perhaps about the value of the asset, and very particularly where there are additional offers. So you might have an offer to buy it, you might have an offer to lease it, as well as the community asset transfer request. And we would see that that's where the service committee would need to take a more strategic overview. So members will obviously get the opportunity to look at the specific criteria that the officers will use to make that recommendation about when it goes to an area committee, when it goes to the service committee. And I think just your last point, yes, obviously we've already referred to the complexities of moving things around, and I think meetings around, and I think that's indeed why colleagues in Democratic Services are looking at it and across the whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Liz. You okay with that, Sean? Yep. He's put his microphone off, so we'll assume so. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks.
Good. Any other questions from members? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. It's going back to the performance management for partners, the proposals, and I'm pleased to see, you know, a number of them being mentioned here. However, there has been a wee bit reluctance, shall we say, from Police Scotland to attend area committees, and it's not only my own area committee, but I've heard it from others. I'm just wondering, how do we gently persuade Police Scotland to come along and give their annual report or 6-monthly report or whatever is required? Thanks.
I'm delighted to tell you that there will be a Police Scotland report to each of the area committees in March.
Excellent. Thanks, Chair.
Good. Thanks, Liz. Okay, with that, we'll move to the recommendations. We have 2.1 to note the work undertaken to inform the review of area committees as referenced in paras 4.3 to 4.5. To agree proposals subject to any additions or amendments agreed at the meeting in relation to community engagement, performance management for our council, performance management for our partners, and remit and the timescale for implementation being after summer recess. To agree to present these as recommendations to full council on the 27th of March, and note the ongoing work in related issues, including common good subcommittees, operational arrangements for committee meetings, and civic education as set out in paragraphs 4.13 to 4.16. So we're happy to note and agree? Good. Thank you. And we'll now move on to item 5, annual review of standing orders, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. And Claire is here to assist members if you have any questions. And Nick, sorry. It's not in my notes. So open up to members. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just on page 23. It's issue 4, standing order 16.1 and 16.2 in relation to requests that members make to have a report on a policy issue submitted to the appropriate council or committee. It states that such reports shall only be submitted after due consideration and appropriate consultation, and in the event that the proper officer determines the submission of such a report is inappropriate, then the final decision as to the need or otherwise the report shall rest with the council. I'm just wanting a little bit more detail on what would that look like? Would that mean that either at full council or at each full council you get a list of requests that members had made that the proper officer determined was not suitable for the report, and how would that be progressed? So would members then vote on each of those, or I just need a little bit more information on how that would work if it was to be implemented.
Thanks, Sean. Vlad.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Marshall. In regards, first and foremost, it's probably important to note that that's the current arrangements, and that's been in arrangements for many years, and certainly it's not one that we've deployed since I've been here, and I think that context in terms of historic context is important, as it's not something that we're triggering in the normal route, as members will hopefully recognise, is when there is a request that will sit with that proper officer that might be a director of the relevant service, and those discussions would happen between the members and the relevant officers. And in essence, if, and I say if with a capital I, there were to be any issues that arose from that and officers felt that that wasn't appropriate, then we would have to, if the member wished for it to go to full council, and it would be probably an exempt matter, that it would be dealt with by full council. But it's full council that would take the ultimate decision as to whether that paper would need to come forward. But as I said, it's not been an issue, certainly since I've been here for 4 years. In discussions with colleagues, I don't think it's ever come up unless members are able to give me some historic knowledge that we haven't come up with, but it's not one that we would look to in essence be, as you say, a kind of list of issues, because that's usually all addressed through the other processes. And bear in mind that we've also got obviously the leaders panel, we've got business bureau, and we've got budget panel that tends to deal with quite a lot of these type matters.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I'm just a little bit surprised that, because I think it'll stretch back over more than 4 years, so I'm just a little bit surprised that no council has asked for a report that's been refused in that time. There seems to be no knowledge of that, because you're right, I can't remember a report coming to full council on the fact that a report that had been requested by a member had been deemed not appropriate by a proper officer. So I'm just a little bit surprised, with all the different issues that, there hasn't been any member requests for reports. And I think what you're saying, you're confirming that.
Vlad's nodding. Yeah. I had a bit of a question around that as well, and it's probably just semantics, but how do we define a policy issue? What is the definition of a policy issue? Because to me, a policy issue might be entirely different to yourself. So I suppose some definition around that. And where do the chair and vice chair of the appropriate committee sit with this? Or is it just purely full council?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the first point in regards to the policy matter, we certainly see that as more of that kind of strategic element of it. Obviously, if it's to do with performance, then that would go through the relevant service committee, and that would be appropriate in terms of service reporting and the relevant performance indicators within that, the relevant report. So in essence, I would very much see it as either the design of, and I think these questions have been asked in the past, the design of policy, which might well, members might wish for a particular matter to be dealt with through a policy, or in essence, in terms of reviewing or looking at our current policies, and also worthwhile noting that through all of this, we've also got other mechanisms for scrutiny, as well as the service committee. We've got area audit risk and scrutiny, which allows for a scrutiny process, as well as internal audits that will be carried out in line with those arrangements.
And where the chair and vice chair fit in of service committees?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I think where they come in, it's not obviously spelled out in there, but certainly I would envisage that the relevant proper officer for that directorate would have those discussions in the ongoing business meetings and otherwise with the chair and vice chair, in the same way that we highlight horizon scanning and issues that arise, as well as performance matters at those meetings. So I very much see it as that would be the route, and that kind of heads up of any issues. But I genuinely feel that there's a number of mechanisms that allows officers to work with members in terms of their relevant requests to address the best route for governance for these matters, and hence I genuinely don't see us deploying that.
No, that's fine. I think just if you were just to read this as is, it doesn't give that flavour of that engagement with chair and vice chair, and it almost reads as if it's an officer-led decision that doesn't have that engagement. So I think we just needed to be quite clear about the engagement of senior councillors as well. Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, the only instance I can think of where a member asked for a report to come to committee was about 18 months of Scottish bridging payments. Councillor Scobie raised that. I think you probably described the process as clunky because it took quite a number of months to resolve. And I think we did find a resolution to it, but probably it could have been a smoother process. I think maybe Vlad will probably remember that one as well.
Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I can't recall that example, but there was a recent example at Economy and Infrastructure Committee of a report brought under that standing order, and casting my mind back a little further back, I can recall, I think I can recall anyway, a report coming to full council where there was a report requested that was out with the scope of the council, so it wasn't a policy issue for the council itself, and then it was left for the council to determine.
I think essentially, Leader, picking up on Councillor Marshall's point, sort of 16.2 is in essence a safety net, and if the ongoing dialogue between members, chair, vice chair, proper officer, etc., hasn't managed to resolve the matter and agree a way forward, it would be at that point it would come to council. So that's probably why it's difficult to recall many instances of that, because generally the matter's resolved before we get to that point. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nick. Councillor Brodie, do you want to come back in? No.
Yeah, Perhaps if we look at that one, there may be a lesson to learn from the Scottish British Bridge and Payments Fund. So maybe we'll obviously could look back at that and see the process, and maybe ask Councillor how that process went.
Yeah, we can look back through for the bridge and payments. Yeah, absolutely. Any other members? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I take it we're being asked, you know, to take on board the feedback from the Business Bureau in a number of these standing orders. So is that their recommendations that we wish to discuss and progress to full council? I take it. For example, issue 2, which is standing order 8.6, it says recommend change to will. So I take it that's taken out may. And so is that their recommendation, or is that something in the gift of us to say, yes, we could make that same recommendation for full council? Yes, I'm getting nods, so thanks for that. So I take it that most of the things are no change, looking at the different policies that's there. So I'm quite happy with you know, taking on board that feedback and using that as a proposal for full council. I'm looking at the Harbours Subcommittee because we've also got 3 other items on this particular paper that warrants maybe a wee bit of discussion. Now, on page 24, 4.5, about second sentence at the bottom, it says at least twice per year. However, 4.6 says amended to reduce the minimum number of meetings from 3 to 2. Now, I think it's all to do with the wording, so I think we should, you know, make it that it will be a minimum of twice a year rather than sort of just at least twice a year. So a minimum of, so I suppose it's just a wording thing. So if members are happy with that to take forward, I think that would be useful. And well, basically that's just it. The pension one, I sit on the pension board, so maybe we should have declared something on that. So we had a long discussion on that, and I think we finally got to the place where we needed to. So I'm happy with the report as it is in the paper. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, you were getting lots of nods to your earlier questions. Vice Chair.
No, thanks, Chair. It's actually on page 24, and it's issue 6, which is standing order 19. It's about the expeditional arrangements if an urgent matter comes up, and it refers to consultation with Chair and Vice Chair and consultation with Convener and Vice Convener. Is that consultation, does it take the form of a consultation, or is it we're just telling you what we're going to do? Or should it be consultation and agreement?
Vlad.
Yes, thank you. The consultation at the moment is purely a consultation, so it's not consultation and agreement. And I would suggest that, again, this is the current wording, and that's been there for many years. It's very infrequently that we use it, and saying that, but I think we've used it in the last couple of years, if members might recall, in terms of particularly Suez-Trans type matters. So it is very infrequently used, and but when it is used, then the idea would be that there would be that discussion between the relevant either convener and deputy convener or chair and vice chair. It might be all of those in advance of making the decision, and in essence, obviously, that informs for the decision to be taken by the relevant officer, which in this instance will be the kind of chief exec decision making. So in essence, it's a consultation that will take fully on board, obviously, all the comments of all the relevant chair and vice chair and convener and deputy convener as required. And but the kind of rationale I would suggest in terms of governance as to why that's in that way is that in Scots law, members do not have a kind of decision making on an individual basis, so kind of chair and vice chair won't have that power, and they can't. There's a difference between England and Scotland in that regard. So in essence, it's either a decision of a committee or the full council, or it's a decision by officers. And therefore, in essence, in this one, it's saying whether it's so urgent that it needs to be an officer that makes that decision. Otherwise, there might be time for a relevant special meeting of whatever committee or full council, which would be the right route for that. So that's the only reason why there isn't as agreed by, because otherwise that would mean a decision by that chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
Can I just come back to a bit of a daft question, and I'm probably taking it a wee bit further than this, because what happens, and I'm well aware of the West Trans issues and various other things that have come up. We then go back to ratify the decision. What happens if we don't ratify the decision?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of retrospective, and it's a valid point. In essence, it's more of that kind of rubber stamping of what has happened, because the decision's there, the delegation's there, and it's very clear that in essence is a kind of endorsement of the process rather than an actual agreement. We wouldn't be able to, for all of these decisions, and I say all, they're very infrequent, but when they do happen, obviously the idea is to take decisive action, and we can retrospectively come back on that.
I think, Chair, it's also just a means of making the public aware that such a decision has been taken and it's endorsed or ratified, as you say, by a committee or not.
You okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, I think probably the only, I mean, I agree with the inclusion of group leaders, but I would say where appropriate, because some things do go to group leaders and they come to leaders panel, but not absolutely everything does, because there's sometimes a confidential element. So I suppose it's how that would sit in there. I'm not proposing that we change it today, it's just a bit of food for thought. And we know we've got the Chair of West Trans here. There's sometimes issues that can't be divulged to other members for obvious reasons. But that's my only comment. Any other questions from members? Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just a general question, because on this agenda item, this is the annual review of standing orders. But it also mentions in 1.3 notes the scheme of delegations and delegation between officers and members. And this is only my second or third meeting, but I think we've looked at the standing orders, but have we had a deep dive into the scheme of delegations, you know, what delegations are to officers and what are to members? And the reason why I'm saying that is that there's one that, you know, that it's being processed at the moment, which is through education and thriving communities in relation to service level agreements. And there seems to be some, you know, whether it's built into the scheme of delegations is, because I can remember when service level agreements, we had a list of 44, I think it went to last Thursday's meeting. And a lot of these have been kind of negotiated by officers, but members have not, it hasn't come to the relevant service committees. And it's just because I can remember way back in the days when Community Resources was a service committee, that service level agreements used to come to the appropriate committee. And somewhere down the line that seems to have stopped. And it's just the understanding of, you know, what changed in the scheme of delegations, or, you know, it's just, I can remember how things used to be and how they are now. And that's just one example of items where you would have thought it was a member decision, but it now seems to be taken by an officer.
Yeah, this was actually raised by Councillor Stevenson at Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing a couple of weeks ago, around the service level agreements with, mainly in leisure, more than anything else. And they did agree to bring us forward the service level agreements once they've been reviewed, but it would probably be taken in private, because some of them, there's an element of commercial confidentiality as well. So I think that's kind of in train, but only for that particular committee. But Vlad, I'll turn to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in regards to the full review of scheme of delegations, I think we've reviewed the scheme of delegations at least 3 or 4 times in my time here, and we've done quite thorough deep dives into what members' kind of views and thoughts were in regards to what we should be focusing on. They've been through the Business Bureau as well in terms of further discussions, and in essence we've carried out that review only recently, as members will recall. Only last year both the scheme of delegations to committees and officers were agreed, and that was quite a thorough exercise. We went around the political groups as well, and we carry out a sort of kind of light touch review on a yearly basis, but actually the light touch has been much more complex than light touch of the last few years, so we've obviously done quite thorough reviews of these. We're more than happy to take on board through that kind of Business Bureau pipeline for any future discussions, and I know that colleague Claire keeps a wee note of any queries or requests that come from members, and then when we're doing the review we add that to that list, and then we obviously discuss that through that route. But in terms of the delegations, they are as they currently sit, which is full council will obviously delegate to committees, will delegate to subcommittees within that, and thereafter will delegate to officers. And as I think what Councillor Marshall's is pointing at is whether that's at the right level. But officers do normally have delegations for negotiations of any contract. Any service level agreement is a contract, and it's important that we have that kind of legal as well as governance oversight from an officer's perspective in terms of signing these off. So it's important that we do that within the scheme of delegations.
Yep. And just quickly to come back, I have no problem with officer actually having that, but whether or not there's any scrutiny of that, after that. So it's maybe that if we are reviewing it on an annual basis, and not for this year, but next year, we maybe do another deep dive into the scheme of delegations as well, and maybe we need to kind of look at that, and just if there's enough information there that makes it clear what are the responsibilities of elected members and what responsibilities of officers.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Councillor Marshall. Vlad's nodding, so we'll take that on board. Any other questions, Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, just a quick one, because it's an annual review, and obviously this covers all committees, from full council downwards, and my thought of mind, does it also cover the joint full council and youth council? Are we guided by these standing orders when we have that particular meeting as well? The reason why I'm asking is because we could submit motions as elected members, but is there an opportunity for the Youth Council to submit motions, because it is a joint meeting? Thanks.
I'm looking at colleagues to see if that's ever happened, Chair. So I don't think it has. I think we obviously work very closely with the Youth Council in terms of items that they wish to have. So I think that probably circumvents the need for a motion, I would suggest. But in essence, the standing orders will apply because it's still a meeting of this council. And in theory, yes, there could be a route, but we would obviously try and make sure that it's the Youth Council agenda that's taken forward, and in essence they have full engagement and consultation in regards to what should be in there.
Yeah, and I suppose the same would apply to the non-elected member representatives on education as well. I don't think they're allowed to submit motions either, but they could ask an elected member to submit something on their behalf, potentially. But yes, interesting to look at.
Yeah, because I can remember, maybe was it last year or the year before, I can't remember, but where we had to pick 2 out of 4 or whatever it was, and there was 3 in my group that we wanted to progress with, and I was actually going to put a motion in that we actually take all 3. However, but that's in our gift as elected members. But where is it in that gift from the Youth Council? But yeah.
Good point, well made. Okay. Do you want to come in, Nick? No. Well, we'll consider it, yeah, absolutely. Okay, any other questions? No. With that, we'll move to recommendations, and members are asked to consider 2.1 feedback from Business Bureau on the matters raised previously as set out at 4.3. 2.2, determine whether there should be any recommended changes to standing orders for full council to consider and determine any alteration. And 2.3, to agree to recommend the amendments to the council's scheme of administration and delegation to committees to full council as outlined at 4.6 to 4.9. Are we happy to note 1, agree 2 and 3? Yep. Good. Moving on to item 6. Establishment of a Climate and Environment Subcommittee, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. And Claire Rogerson and Simon Fieldhouse are here to assist members. I've got Simon online. Not currently.
We can probably field if we can.
Yeah, okay. We'll continue on with this one then, and hopefully Claire and Vlad can field any questions from members. So I'll open up the debate to members. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we had a wee discussion with a group, and when it comes to the sizes, shall we say, some members felt that, you know, say, for instance, a subcommittee of 21 might just be a bit too big, and maybe 7's maybe a little bit too small, especially when it comes to proportionality of other groups, for example. So we're not quite sure where we want to pitch this as in size, but anywhere between 11 and 15, or maybe even something that's not actually you know, dedicated as 7, 11, 15 or 21, you know, we could make it a group of, for example, 10 or 12, you know. So I'm easy, but as long as it's not too big and not too small, I think that was the general discussion when it came to the size of the committee. I don't know what others' thoughts are on that, but happy to listen.
I think the key with this is that we have the right representation on it as well. And officers, I think, are recommending no more than 11 members for this particular subcommittee, but I wonder if we can just leave that open for full council to determine. Vice Chair?
Thanks. I must admit, I would support 11, and as a member of the working group for the last few years as well, I think 11 would be an appropriate figure. 21 would certainly be too many, in my opinion.
Any other views from members? So we're quite happy to propose 11 to full council.
Yeah.
Nick?
Just to make the point, Chair, that I think 11's a good number in terms of proportionality, because that would ensure that each group gets at least 1 seat. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, so with that, we'll move to recommendations, and we're agreeing to recommend to full council the delegations, naming size and frequency of meetings of Climate and Environment Subcommittee as detailed in paras 4.4 to 4.8 and Appendix 1, but with a recommendation that the size of the committee should be 11. Is that correct? Yeah. Happy to agree? Okay. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah. Just before I agree that, Chair, I forgot about the appendix, the scrutiny and decision making. I take it this is something that can be improved through time. It's not set in stone. That, you know, we may have to adjust it, you know, once the subcommittee is up and running. So we're not sort of sticking to what's in the paper. Thanks.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and given that we've just stood up our Tackling Poverties and Inequalities subcommittee, I think they have to be able to expand or otherwise as they develop, and we get into a rhythm with those particular committees and what their delegations should or should not be. So I think we'll have to review these new subcommittees on a fairly regular basis in their infancy, which we're going to do with the other ones. So, yeah.
Happy to agree on that basis.
Good.
Thanks, Chair.
Excellent. Sorry, my laptop's on a go slow. So item 7, any other business deemed urgent by the Chair? I've no urgent business, so we'd just like to thank you all for your attendance today, and I'll now close the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.